Alright people, this is the Union Tapes episode number 12, and this episode is a little bit different to the previous ones. Even though it was the first one we started, the Union Tapes was originally going to be a series of shows about different aspects within BMX, but we kind of got sidetracked and it turned into something else. The one you're about to watch or listen to is about the legendary Meanwhile quarter pipes in West London in the mid-80s. The Westway part of the A40 has always been a place that's had a little bit of magic for the BMX and skate scene in London. It had one of the first UK skate parks built next to it in the late 70s, and it also had the first BMX track in London built right next to it, the seminal Westway BMX track. Heading in a bit is where you'd find the Meanwhile quarter pipes, which is where a few local BMX riders took matters into their own hands and built some quarter pipes under the A40 right near Royal Oak train station. This was the place to be in 86 or 87, part due to the coverage it was getting from BMX Action Bike, which was then evolving into Rad magazine. But they were just covering the scene. This stuff was going to happen regardless. Enjoy it. So did you ever ride Meanwhile one skate park?
But I used to go down there and ride most days. I used to ride Romford as well, but really it was mainly the Meanwhile skate park. It was I think it's there's a skate park there now, but it's very different to what was there when I was there. So what there used to be was a huge bowl. It was a really wide diameter bowl, probably 3 times wider than the Romford main bowl, but really mellow through most of it. And then one section of it used to go to sort of nearly to vert, and then there was a wooden section that I added to. So there was some posts in there when I went down, and then I put some plywood and bits and pieces on that ramp to make it as vert as I could. And I guess it would probably at that point be, I don't know, maybe 15 feet high, something like that. So it was quite a big bowl. And I put a kick board, to do foot plants on the side of the ramp as well.
Yeah, that was. I lived over more in West London, and I really hadn't been in England that long. I just moved from Holland, and I met some kids from the neighborhood, and they said, "Go check out this place, Meanwhile Gardens." And it was the first time I think I'd seen a concrete-ish. Well, it was concrete. I say ish because it looked like it was half finished. Yeah. But it was a scary neighborhood, and the first time I got off the tube, the very first time I was there, my experience was I got my bike stolen from me. I got mugged by these dudes, pulled their knives and shit, and I'm like, fuck. So I was really hesitant to go back. So we went back in a larger group next time, and that's the first time I met Howard. All right. And Carl and Junior and John. And there was one part of the Meanwhile Gardens that I guess it was the deepest part of where the bowl part was, and then they had extended it with wood. It wasn't quite vert. But then I hadn't really been riding any vert, so it's just like you just go as high as you can and pull out.
Yeah, I remember it. I went there when it was like that. Yeah. Yeah.
It was fun, man. But I was just after that, my first experience, I'm always looking over my shoulder. Yeah. But yeah, that's where we rode first.
Oh, Meanwhile one, yeah, I did. I remember it was super rough. It had there was just that one piece of vert where they made like an extension onto the concrete.
Yeah.
And we would hit that up, but you couldn't do very much on there.
Yeah, because we used to get to go to a lot of places. Cause I used to ride for Rally with Jason Lunn and Darren Wood and Andy Ruffle and Craig Schofield and those dudes. So we did a lot of shows and with Andy doing demos, and we got to travel a bunch of them. Meanwhile, it was a place that we used to go to quite often.
Absolutely, almost spent all my time at Meanwhile one just learning. It was great for learning to do kick turns and things, which were really big back in the day.
Can you remember what was going on with BMX at that point in time?
Oh, it's dying, wasn't it? It was just like dead. It's just like that what BMX did.
It was all kind of collapsing. It was like the death knell. Our idea had sort of ghettoised BMX. Yeah, but it was to make it more like skating, so I understood where they were coming from. Riding around, getting called BMX Bandit, that was always a Always a good one.
Kind of a dead time, I guess, in BMX. Like,
You know, the glory days were over. It was on a downhill slope, and the magazines were trying to do everything they could to try and promote the sport. So, you know, basically, and I think that's where I saw, meanwhile, because I think I saw the guys, there was an article in there, and I think Greg was doing an air over like a massive canyon gap. And I was like, I want to go there.
So how did you find out about Meanwhile the first time?
Either I saw Jason Hassel, either a photo of Hassel riding there, or it might have been the photos of Greg Giot doing the topside note for Can. I can't remember.
They were in the same mag, yeah.
Yeah. But I had just moved with my parents to Milton Keynes from Wales, and like all of a sudden I was like it's striking distance from London. You know, I could get on the train and go down there, and that was the very first place I went in London. And that day I met Greg Giot, I met Nick Elkan, I think I met Andy Brown, I met like everyone was there, and from that point on I just started going down there every weekend, Saturday and Sunday.
I was with somebody, and we met up with Lee Reynolds and Howard, and they were doing demos in Leicester Square, and they were making some coin out of that as well. People would just turn up, big ring round, and everyone would start doing tricks. I think at that particular point, Lincoln was there as well, Lincoln Blacksley, and Phil Dolan.
We just saw better people through South Bank. We go to South Bank, and then I think we met Andrew Boo Boo, and then like I met Lee Reynolds, Nick Elkin.
So you went to South Bank first?
Yeah, I think we got to South Bank and got up to Meanwhile.
maybe Nick and Lee, because Lee and Nick would always hang out because Lee would come down from Milton Keynes. And I think, obviously going to contests, they would go, yeah, come down to London, there's this really good spot. And I would go and stay with Andy, and we all just hung out together,
Can you describe the area that Meanwhile was in?
It's just sketchy. Like, first time I went there with the guys from Harlow, and within 10 minutes of being at Meanwhile, Shane's cousin had his gold chains ripped off his neck. Shane had tried to fight back and been stabbed.
Oh fuck! It was rough. It was rough. It was so rough back then. It was like, I mean, I wouldn't. I don't think I would have gone there by myself. You only felt safe if you were with a group of BMXers. It's definitely people would come and try and fucking jack up bikes and shit. But I still had the fucking best times of my life there,
Yeah.
DMZ.
What's that?
Demilitarized zone.
Oh.
It was rough. Because it was obviously right next to Paddington Main Line. And obviously where the ramp was, overhead was a motorway. Behind it was Meanwhile 2, where all the skaters went. And lots of the area around there was like housing estates, so you get like rude boys rolling through. It was. And then one particular point, it was late at night, Zig Zig Sputnik turned up.
I've heard this story.
Yeah, and they got out the limo and the skaters went, no. And the skaters just ran them out.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah, from what I heard, it got a bit hairy. Because they got these skateboards out with the great big winkle pickers in it and went, ah! And then, all the local skaters weren't impressed.
I've heard that story. I can't remember if someone else told me.
Yeah, I think it was actually a lot gnarlier than that.
Yeah.
But the area, it wasn't a very nice area. And when you were riding, you always had like one eye around you. It was just like riding at South Bank, just in case like you get some rude boys rolling up. But if Adju was about, generally Adju would know after rude boys he would be rocking up.
Or relax.
Yeah, you could relax, but it was a sketchy old area.
I was heading home and I was by myself in the subway, like going down the subway, and these two guys fucking out of nowhere, all of a sudden these two guys came out and grabbed my bike, and they were like fucking, they were like, give us your bike, and I was like, I'm probably just gonna have to give him my bike at this point. And then fucking all of a sudden, I'm not even kidding, like at the end of the tunnel, fucking come around the corner on his crutches. And he just looks at him and he's like, leave the kid alone. And sure enough, they just fucking took off. They just took off. I'm like, yes, I like my friends.
Dodgy area.
So, and that still is. Yeah.
I got pulled off my bike near there.
What recent?
About 3 years ago, off
Yeah.
Knife Point, like going on the canal. So yeah, it's a shady area.
Yeah, all the canals.
Yeah.
Like under an overpass or whatever, motorway, whatever you want to call it. Just high traffic area. Like when it was rush hour, it was packed. The roads were packed. People walking through there, we would have crowds. It was kind of damp and dingy, and yeah, it was kind of grimy, but it was that's kind of the direction BMX was going for us. It was moving away from like clean cut. It was moving a little more, punk rock or a new era or whatever it was.
I grew up in London, so to me it was just being part of London.
Do you know the guys who built the quarters?
No. Yeah. Like
So it's a mystery.
That's a mystery to me.
I don't actually. I don't. Did Greg know?
Yeah, Greg know, yeah.
I don't know the guys who built the quarters. I wish I did. But there was lots of talk about how they were built. Was it a mistake? Did they do it on purpose? Because it was a elliptical transition, I think. So, yeah, the first time I went to Meanwhile and hit those ramps, I was like, holy shit, these rides so nice.
Well, I built the first one with another guy. I think his name was John.
Where did you get the wood for that quarter pipe?
All right, so one day I show up there, and it's like the gang is there, and John and Nick are like, I want to say Howard. I'm going to just say Howard. John and Howard are, sorry, Howard, if you see this later. They're like, yeah, we're just going to go find some wood. There's like some abandoned buildings. So we walked into town, which is like, if you're walking from the ramp towards Royal Oak Tube Station, you make a right. Yeah. And you go down that way. And, man, there was like all these old like department store buildings or something that were just all abandoned, and they were surrounded by plywood fencing. So we got a lot of wood from that, but then we also went inside, and that was kind of cool because I guess we're breaking and entering. I don't know, but there were spiral staircases that were like you could fall through if you weren't careful. I mean, if I weighed what I weigh now back then, dude, I would have dropped 5 floors down. You know what I mean? Yeah. But so there was like scraps, and there was the main plywood part came from. It was all obviously used. Been out in the weather and stuff, but it came from that back fencing surrounding stuff, and then inside were 2x4s spread around here and there. So we just tore shit apart. And then everything was free. Get the shit all the way back.
So every bit of that ramp was free, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh wow! And who picked the to put it under the underpass?
I was just totally fed up of riding and never being able to sort of ride when the weather got bad. We'd seen a magazine article. And in the magazine article, there's a section on how to build a quarter pipe. Probably just a small little picture, and that was it. So we just went to under the flyover, the A40 flyover in London, which wasn't too far from Meanwhile, but we figured, well, that was a great place to stay dry, and we just took the wood down there and we sawed it and we screwed it together and we just used the plans from the magazine.
And I guess we were just like doing flatland or something there. And then one day it's like, it's a perfect spot for a quarter pipe. So it just kind of happened. And then we just ended up going and stealing the wood, I guess, and building it up. And John's the one who had the tools.
How many times did you think you went there to ride?
We used to go every weekend. I mean, literally every weekend. And then we'd like get bored of riding there, go ride Meanwhile Gardens, go down South Bank, go all sorts of places. Like just go around the West End, whatever.
Just countless. I used to work in Boaters Fine Foods, which was in Tower Bridge, and so I used to finish about 1 o'clock, no, 12 it was, and I used to ride over there. I used to come in on my bike.
In the week?
Oh yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah, used to just go over there, ride in the week. To whoever was there, occasionally, because it was a lot of it was in the summer holiday. It was one particular summer as well. You'd have like Geot was there, and you'd have Reynolds and stuff, and it was. Yeah, you just basically ride over there, hack across London, when I think about how we used to ride across from Tower Bridge to Paddington, or even if you hopped on a train and got part of the journey, we were just like a public menace. You know, because we had like 20 of us riding down the road.
If I said at least once or twice a month we'd go down there.
Okay.
But we'd also like we you know the sessions would happen there, but then we'd also go into London like Piccadilly Circus, pedal around, like go busking and raise some money, like doing flatland and stuff. Because back then we all did everything, the road ramps and flatland. So, but you know, at least a couple of times a month. I'd say 1 or 2 times a month at least for a good, I don't know, a year.
That was it. That's where we'd always go meet. I still like Meanwhile One. I mean, that was kind of, you know, to me that has that skate park vibe to it. But the quarters were absolutely fantastic. And actually, for whatever reason, that quarter pipe was a really good quarter pipe.
I rode there for the first year was Meanwhile Two with the ramps.
Yeah, the quarters, yeah.
Yeah, it's once we built them, it was the first year. I mean, the whole time I was there, really, right, for 4 years. So, but the first year was the coolest year, man. It was pretty amazing because I was, I think when they first came, I got like a picture, like in a Radis Unlimited with the double step up thing. It was crazy because I could do any variation at 3 feet and land at the bottom of the ramp.
It was a lot because after the first visit, like I was talking to Lee Reynolds and Greg Geock, they were there. And then we sort of hooked up and went for a ride around London. So after that, I was kind of got really good friends with Greg Geock. Like we just clicked. And so I was hanging out with Greg quite a lot then. So I went to Meanwhile a lot.
You know, if we weren't going to Romford and then eventually Latimer Road, Awesome Ramp, and Shigford and stuff like that, that was our spot in between. And usually at least every other weekend. But so the whole time I was there, the 4 years, it was always Meanwhile because it was the best place to go. It was because of the weather.
Yeah.
You know England.
Yeah.
It's raining all the fucking time.
It's still like it today, man. How many people on average do you think used to ride there when you went? Like what was the average group? 4 or 5 people there?
Yeah. And then, I mean, some days it just really blow up. And you just have people there, you didn't know half the people. And those were good. They were good days.
I remember it being like Greg Geock, Lee Reynolds, Andy Brown started coming. Obviously Lincoln, myself, Adju, Nick Elkin, Gary McCallion.
There was a good crew that showed up there, and like Flatlanders too, like Lincoln Blacksley and Phil Dolan were always there. Graham Marfleet was there regularly. Adju Boo Boo. Greg, obviously. David Beveridge would come a lot.
Well, you became aware of everyone. Yeah. Skaters, you just said they were just like, yep, skaters going through whatever. Anyone on a bike turned up because you used to get rude boys turning up on bikes, and you think you've just stolen that. And that's a rubbish bike. You are going to try and swap that for mine, aren't you?
I think. Do you remember Graham Marfleet? I think he might have come once or twice to Meanwhile.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I went with him twice.
Did you?
Yeah.
He was way ahead of his time.
Yeah.
Do you remember some of the stuff he was doing? Just like off the hook.
Real bit.
Yeah, really good. I don't know what happened to him because he just vanished.
Oh, I know another local was Fraser Campbell too.
Oh yeah, I remember. Yeah, he was there that day that we went to Leicester Square. He's in the photos I've got of that place. Yeah.
Yeah, that was fun. We'd always make him. He was like the cute little guy of the group. So we'd make him carry the hat around and we would make a ton. Well, we wouldn't make a ton of money, but we'd make enough money to go eat at Taco Bell in Leicester Square.
There was times we'd go there and there'd be other people there that we didn't know were riding, and like they kind of took a back seat when like Lee and Greg and Andy and that would show up. I'd say there was a good 6 or 7 of us. It was, like Phil Dolan and Lincoln would show up, and then it was Andy, Cannon on occasion, Lee, Greg, myself, Nick.
Normally about 4 or 5 of us. It was never a huge group. It would normally be myself, Lee Reynolds, Greg Geock, Andy Brown, Lincoln Blacksley, and sorry if I get any of these names wrong, Jason Hassel, Graham Marfleet, Mike Canning, John Pover, David Beveridge, If I've missed people out, I'm really, really sorry about that. But that was kind of the core people. And out of those, I'd say the most regular were Lee, Greg, Andy, and Lincoln, and myself. And then other people would come down sort of all the time. You'd bump into people that would come to see the ramp and ride the ramp.
There was on the weekends, there was always someone there. If I went there on the weeknights, like, you know, after school or something, it was maybe not as many people, just kind of the local crew. But on weekends, there was, especially after like the first year and a half, you saw it, people there all the time.
Yeah.
Probably, I mean, there was one point that when we first put the two ramps together, and I was doing the canyon, trying to move the ramps further and further apart. I want to say there's like 50 or 60 people there, dude.
Fucking hell.
Meanwhile, it was weird because you turn up and there'd either be people there or there'd be nobody there, and you'd like make that decision: do I now stay on my own at Meanwhile? So on average, if you would go there and there was a session on, there'd be like 5 or 6 people, because you'd have to have a sizable crew. Otherwise, you were just putting yourself out there to just get robbed, because that's how it was back then.
What was your local before Meanwhile?
Local council BMX track.
Okay.
And it was obviously made by someone who had never seen a BMX track and assumed the berm was just a big pile of mud.
All right.
But I was after initially fighting off all the locals, I became like the king of Cheltenham Park BMX track.
Before Meanwhile, Rom Skatepark, like my local area, like we had like a underground, an undercover riding spot. We used to do flat land there and stuff. So yeah, basically Rom. Yeah, we sort of started going to London just to meet other riders and stuff.
Well, when I moved to Stony Stratford, which is on the outskirts of Milton Keynes, there was a rec centre there called The Boat that had this just fucking really sketchy. It wasn't really a half pipe. It was just 2 quarter pipes that they'd stuck together and built like a rough flat bottom. So they were both totally different transitions, different vibes. So it was like interesting to ride. And I rode that for about a year or less maybe, and then they actually gave me a budget to build like a new half pipe in there. And so I built. It was only like 8 feet wide, 8 feet high. But it was built really nice. It had to be like soundproof kind of. So I filled up like both ends. I filled them with sand. So like, pretty much the entire underneath was full of like a few tons of sand. So it made it like, it felt fucking solid.
Yeah.
And it didn't make too much noise, so which was good for the neighbors. And I just rode that like all the time. That was I had a few shots in the magazines riding that one.
Yeah, I've got them. That's on the Out There feature, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I had a little mini ramp on the like from side to side too on the flat bottom.
I can remember the pictures, like if you pink tyres maybe or something like that. I remember. Yeah.
When I was living in Oxbridge, I had the quarter pipe in Oxbridge at the back of, like, there was a little piece of wasteland there, and we had a ramp there that was pretty popular. And then when I moved to Oxford, I built my own quarter pipe, and then I used to ride with Alex Leach and those guys and Bert Squirt in Oxford.
So what was so you arrived from Holland?
As soon as we moved to England, so this will give the year away, it might have been close to 85, there was a Kellogg's show on TV, and I think it was with like Pepe and Neil. I think Ron might have been there, but that might have been at a later date. I don't know, but it was one of the first ones. And so all those things together is like vert. And so we built this little rickety quarter pipe in my backyard.
Do you remember when they added the second quarter, or was there always 2 quarters when you went?
I always remember there being 2. Because I remember them like pushing the ramps apart and doing Greg doing that. Do you remember that insane shot of him like doing a huge gap? Yeah. And so I remember that, but I don't remember there just being the one.
No, there was only one. There was only 1 quarter the first time I went, and I remember when the other one popped up. But I don't remember who built it or any of that.
That was mainly when I went there. It was 1 quarter.
Oh really? Yeah. Oh, so you were early.
Yeah.
Real early.
Yeah. And I was there when the second one showed up, but it was like that was mainly when I was going there when the first quarter showed up.
So I think this was a couple of years on, certainly at least a year after we'd built the initial ramp. And whatever reason, that second ramp was never as good. It just, like I say, sometimes these things are just perfect out of the box. And the first ramp, everybody loved that first ramp. But that second ramp was never quite as good. But it did get used. We'd sometimes set up the two ramps opposite each other, so it was a little bit like a half pipe. And then infamously, Greg did an absolutely huge transition from one ramp to the other. And
who was the most high-profile rider you think you ever saw at Meanwhile?
In my eyes, was Cannon, because it's fucking Mike Cannon, isn't it? The geezer. He was the most high profile because he'd been the one in the spotlight from competitions the longest. So for me, I saw him as the most high profile rider.
This has got to be Reynolds, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, Reynolds.
I think Mike might have been there like one of the first times I went, because I remember being like particularly fucking stoked to see him, because I'd been going to UK BMX contests for a couple of years, and he was like fucking. I kind of idolized him. I'm stoked that we ended up becoming friends. Because he was. I think he was just fucking a legend,
Yeah. Who would you say progressed most at Meanwhile quarters?
Greg Gill and Andy Brown. Like when Andy started going off, it was just like, what the fuck happened to him? We went from like riding flatland, like you're saying, doing a couple of foot airs. Next thing you know, he's doing huge Indians and just like killing them. Like, absolutely. It was so fast. You don't want someone to go through like a progressive explosion. And, yeah.
The funny thing with Andy was he was good on flat, okay on ramps, and then one day something clicked, and like he would just pedal his balls off a ramp. And sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't, but he would go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was scary to watch. One day he was going a few feet, the next day he's going 9 feet. It was crazy.
Who used to shoot photos there?
Well, TLB. That was the first time I really hung out with him. He was a great guy. That's it. I think I don't remember the Nobles ever going there.
TLB for Rad. There was loads of photographers there.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah. I've got a few pictures upstairs. Remember the black and white one I've got of me doing a one-handed out? I think I showed it to you. That was sent to me. The photographer said, "Can I have your name and address and I'll send it to you." He didn't want to see me like dressed in my skimpies.
And that was just a random guy.
Yeah.
That's fucking cool. Isn't it?
Yeah, it was. I've got a few photos from like random photographers. And you think about it, it's the ideal thing back then, because you just basically rocked up. You've got people doing stuff, and you can practice like basically your tracking and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just loads of photographers were there.
Well, I didn't know that. Yeah, I just assumed that there was.
Yeah, I've even got on the back of it. It's got like his sticker, where he's put his name and address on it and everything else.
Well, you've had that since the 80s. Yeah.
I sent you a picture of it actually, the black and white image. I'll dig it out and send it to you later on.
All right.
Yeah.
I think it was just like, because TLB was both Rad magazine and was it Action Bike?
Action Bike turned into Rad, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So that's all I remember. I know Freestyle BMX came along a while later, but I don't know if they were necessarily there. I don't remember any pictures of me walking from whoever. That was the Noble brothers, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't remember specifically. I mean, we certainly had BMX Action Bike. And the fun bit about building the ramp was myself and this other guy, we were completing this ramp that we'd just gotten the instructions out of a magazine, and I phoned BMX Action Bike up and I said, look, we've got this amazing ramp that we all love to ride, and it's underneath the flyover on the A40. Why don't you come down and take some shots? And we hadn't actually finished the ramp at that point. And I remember the photographer coming down with Jason Hassel, and we were still screwing in the plywood at the bottom of the ramp when they turned up. But they came, Jason rode it, and it was just fantastic. So Jason was really the first people to get any air, first person to get any air out of that ramp.
The swatch thing was, I don't know who talked us into that. I know it was later because Lee was there. Lee came around I think about like the second year.
86
of it. Maybe earlier, but it felt like about a year later. And then I can't remember who said it. They're like, yeah, put all this shit on. I'm like, okay, cool. I thought we were going to get to like keep it. I didn't have that shit at the end of the day. I got a poster and a magazine out of it, though, so that was fun.
Lee wearing a fucking long trench coat with swatches on his shit. Yeah, that shit was funny. It's kind of funny to see it come out in magazines after the fact because it just seems so lame at the time, you know?
Yeah. Well, it didn't look. I didn't think it looked that great in the mags, but it was kind of cool. What they were doing was still good, though. So.
Yeah, I just think like growing up in the UK, when you look at American magazines, there's a spectacle, you know. It's an exciting thing to look at. And, like these people, like they elevate their profile by having like sunshine in the background and wearing a uniform and I don't know, whatever it is, you know. Like, and then so you see Lee wearing this stupid Cure trench coat or whatever it is. Like to a little kid growing up in Leicestershire is probably stoked, you know.
Yeah, totally, yeah. Yeah, Greg mentioned that. He said that they didn't let them keep anything. They thought they were going to keep all the clothes, but they took them all back. Probably did him a favour. So.
Yeah. Well, they didn't do Lee a favour. He turned out fucking weird anyway.
Best thing you ever saw, meanwhile?
Gil. Yeah. He was just fab to watch. I was such a dick to him. But he was just, I mean, Lee was good, but Lee was like blunt force trauma. Lee would just hit stuff, like, boom, boom, you know, and there was this etherealness to watching Gil ride, you know.
Greg, I'd say Greg. Yeah. Well, I'd said he was the one to watch. You know, like just when he was on form, just like, yeah, amazing. Helmetless, hatless, just jeans, t-shirt, and hit that. It was amazing.
Thanks, man. You know, but it just depended, like me, it depended what Greg he got on the day at the time, you know. But he was just fabulous, man. Absolutely fabulous.
I would say it's probably Greg doing that 12-foot fucking canyon jump. Greg was either on or off. Like he was either untouchable or he had fucking pop out itis.
Greg, when he gapped the two quarters, you know, that was pretty nuts. We gradually moved the quarters apart, and he would just get a little farther and a little farther and a little farther, and that was pretty nuts.
Yeah, that was in the Radness Unlimited, wasn't it? That was a good page, actually.
Yeah. Watching him go through his meltdowns with whatever you want to call it, pop-out-itis or whatever it is, that was pretty. He was losing his fucking mind. Like, he pedaled all the quarter like he was going to do like a 9-foot air, and just as he's going up the quarter, he would just jump off.
So I think Lee and Greg shooting it out to do the highest airs, and you're talking like 10-foot airs there. You know, it's concrete. It's a pretty scary place to ride, actually. So the ramp's wooden, but everything else is absolute solid concrete. Lee doing some crazy high airs, Greg doing some crazy high airs, Andy Brown's can-cans and can-can variations, unlike anybody else. I mean, they're just fully committed, full out, amazing things to watch. And Greg, again, doing, it's got to be 12, 15 feet transfer from one 8-foot quarter to another 8-foot quarter. Again, these are in the days where if you were transferring a few feet, that was really good. And what he did was just absolutely crazy. Incredible rider.
When you did that gap, was that the same day as you did like the swatch pictures and the like surf gear stuff?
I think that was later.
It looks a different time.
This is kind of when we made the two ramps. I remember seeing Hugo Gonzalez in the magazines and how he always did canyon stuff, and he would try like, you know, massive alley-oop 540s, like 8 from 1 foot to 8 foot to the other ramp, and that's why the canyon thing came out. I was just started doing canyons, and then wanted to see how far it would go until it was as far as it was. And I think the natural feeling of carving in air has always been more appealing to me personally. So that's why, like, in contest runs, it would be canyoning. You know, there'd be the big 12-foot wide ramp on one side, but everything else would be a canyon and an alley-oop on the other side with the two little skinny-ass quarter pipes. Because it was just a more natural feeling to carve like that.
Yeah.
Andy Brown getting fucking ridiculously tweaked turn downs. Like, right when I was trying that, turn downs are the one trick that took me the longest to learn, by far. And he got them, like, right away. It's like you saw the picture of Mark McGlynn, right?
Yeah.
And, okay, there's a whole new move. It's the most beautiful fucking thing I've ever seen. And, like, Andy had it right away. I think he got a cover on Rad right away. And so that was awesome.
The one thing I'm like interested in, because like John and I went there.
Yeah.
And John was like, yeah, they used to cycle around, like they used to come round the corner and like crank into it. But to look at that now, like you could, like if you wanted, you could build up. So like I don't see why you needed that much speed.
I guess most people would have stood here, like where this block is. But Greg and Lee, we remember sessions where they used to pedal round this corner here. Maybe we should go to Royal Oak, because that's where the station everyone used to get off at. Many a bikes got stolen there, on them platforms. And that's the Hammersmith and City line, so it's going that way. But yeah, look at that run up.
So if anybody took a run up around the corner, you did need to. It's so, the run up is so long. Yeah, they just hit the roof at full speed. They probably collapse into the ramp, like the speed you could get. Like it would be nuts if anybody did that. I never saw anybody come from around the corner.
It was perfect because the whole run up to the quarter pipe was just a little bit downhill, so you could get going super fucking fast.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, did you ever take run-ups from round the corner?
Yeah, we'd come from around the corner and just fucking crank it.
I was telling the guys that, and they was like, "No way." They wouldn't believe me.
But both Greg and I hit the ceiling at some point.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I definitely touched the ceiling.
You touched it and you stayed on.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah.
We was looking at how high that is, because obviously the markers are still there, and it's like, yeah, that is a fucking dangerous. That's dangerous.
Yeah.
For the most part, we weren't always blasting. We get like, 8 or 9 feet. Cool. We're just messing around, and then every once in a while we push it, and then we go for the 11, 12. See, we, kind of buzz the ceiling or something. And when we did that, I liked watching Lee do that because he was a madman.
When we went the other day, we was looking at the 11 foot, and it looks like you're going to hit the ceiling if you're 11. So you had to crouch down, or what was the story there?
No, it's if you just do like a table or a little bit of an invert, you're pretty everything's pretty even. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I mean, if you were doing like a chicken leg air or something, or some like a blither kind of turnaround granny air, then you might do that. But if you know you're going high and you keep it to like a medium level kind of invert, nothing upside down or anything like that, but just a little bit over flat, everything's even and you're good.
All right, it's fucking close, man. What was the worst crash scene at Meanwhile?
Mine.
That's what everyone else is saying.
Yeah, I did. I think I was trying to learn Indian airs, and I got my feet off, and the upper part of my body just floated up, and then just my head just go donk, and I've got a crash over my arm, but it's not full face. So turned blue. They spun me over, tugged my tongue out, so I didn't sort of suffocate, and I was in Paddington Hospital for 5 hours. Then I woke up, and my mum was there, and because I was obviously in a bed, they'd put me into a paper gown, and where I'd moved to, like, I'm a right fidget. Basically, like, I was naked under it, and my mum was sitting there, and the last chicken before Christmas was just hanging out. My mum was like, "Hello, dear." I was like, "Oh God, man!" Like, So I'm trying to go home, like, look at my mum. Like, yeah, thank you. Just,
He almost killed himself down there as well. That was scary shit.
Did you there?
Yeah. He did it. I can't remember what air he was doing. He did an air. Basically, did about an 18-foot drop to his head, And then he was just lying on the floor, like convulsing and blue lips and all that sort of stuff. And we were just like, we didn't have mobile phones back then, so it's just like ran up to the nearest like phone box, called an ambulance. He went to A&E, but he could come out all right. Well, as well as he expected. But yeah, that, you know, like when you watch something, you realise how dangerous BMXing can be. I mean, he proper, you know, like if someone's lying there.
Yeah, scary.
It's just really frightening.
There was one occasion where he did an Indian air and he just pushed it too hard on the bike. Like, you know, like when you kick your legs in one direction, the bike kind of goes in the other. And he would extend it so hard that he didn't get the bike back under him quick enough, and he just kind of catapulted to his face and was out cold, and we had to get him to the hospital and stuff. But it's just because he fucking pushed it so hard. He pushed like he would.
Only one, and that's Andy Brown, unfortunately. I think he was doing a no-foot can-can, or maybe a one-hand, one-foot can-can, and it just went really badly wrong, and he crashed really badly. And I won't go into it too much, but we just made sure he was all right. And, of course, he is fine, and, you know, you look back and it was absolutely fine, but at the time that was pretty scary.
Adju had a really bad crash there as well. He's like cut his knee ligaments in it. I remember that Adju for like about a year after. Do you remember his leg was super skinny? Yeah, I mean, he was like, what happened to you? Yeah.
Was you there for that?
I missed that crash. Yeah, but yeah, I remember him going, you know, he couldn't walk properly for ages. Like,
fucking hell. I remember the big scar like that on his knee.
Yeah. You know, he was supposed to be a professional footballer.
Yeah.
He had to carry on riding BMX. Right. Yeah.
Bad choice. Bad choice.
I don't know. Get a lot more out of BMXing in some ways than you do kicking.
Sure, yeah.
Around. You know what I mean? I wouldn't give up my experience BMXing.
Me neither.
For money as such. You know?
But yeah, he probably would have been nicely set. But not that he's probably not unhappy with his life now, but.
I was riding with him there one day, and he was fucking sick as fuck. But he crashed, and he literally got me. He's like I hurt my knee, and we took him to the hospital. It turned out he had shattered his kneecap. They didn't even fucking face him. The dude was like, you always felt safe when you were with Andrew there.
Yeah, totally.
He was a hard bastard.
So you know what year the quarters went?
I don't, because they were still there when I left. I left in '88, and I don't know how long it went after that.
Yeah, I think that was the last year, '88. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you guys all started riding half pipes as well after that.
Yeah.
That's where I used to see you at Chingford and stuff.
Yeah, Chingford. We'd go to Chingford a lot. That was fun as fuck. I have some photos from there.
Nah, I wasn't around for that. I think I moved to the States in '89, so I don't know if they were gone before that, but I don't remember.
I think I'd already moved back to the States, hadn't I? I think I moved in '88.
So they stayed there the whole time?
I believe so.
Okay.
I mean, like I said, my memory's fuzzy. I remember eventually spending a lot more time. My last year in England, I was at Latimer Road more often than not, because it was only like a 10, 15-minute ride on the bike to get to that ramp. So there was less meanwhile, but I'm pretty sure they were there the whole time. And then I heard much later when I had some friends from England come visit me when I moved back here, and I think they mentioned that the ramps had been torn down. I
don't know. Quite a few years later, and they just disappeared.
How was it when your local spot ended up the hot spot back then?
Didn't really see it like that. We're just BMX guys having fun, you know, just hanging out with my friends. And we would just arrange to meet there and just ride for a while.
What was the twist trick team?
I kind of, I was riding with these amazing people, and they were all much better than me. And I had this idea we'd do the twist trick team. And I was working for a 2000 AD back then, actually, for a comic company. And I'd spoken to the guy that owns it, and I said, look, can we get some Judge Dredd t-shirts? And he said, yeah, sure, you can use those for your team. So I had our names printed on the back of the shirts, and then I had to hand draw, because obviously the 540 back then was called a twist, and so it's a twist trick team. And then I drew a clock face that the time was 540 on the back, and then our names were on the top of it. So it was myself, Lee Reynolds, Greg Guillot, Jason Webb, and Fraser Campbell. And so that was the Twist Trick team. I think we were before our time, actually, but the idea was to go and try and do shows in Europe and maybe do some other bits and pieces. But to be honest, we never... I was supposed to manage it. I never got anything together. But it was a great idea, absolutely fantastic. But what we did do as a bunch was we'd go to Leicester Square and we would just busk. Back then you were allowed to go, which you can't do now. You have to get a license. But we would just ride our bikes and do boomerangs and tail whips and stuff like that. And it was amazing. So Fraser would go around with a cat. And then that was it. We would just go and get burgers and, fries and drinks and stuff. And that was just fantastic. I mean, they were really happy days.
Where did you end up after the quarters had gone?
South Bank became our local.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I ended up going there every weekend, meeting up with, Lincoln, and then we got to know James White, Adju was there. I even slept down there a couple of nights. Yeah. I knew this homeless bloke down there. Chase was there as well. Chase
Ewing,
yeah, he ended up staying down there and living down there for a while. It actually
was that the year of the Ryder Cup?
I think it was the
the enchanting ramp.
Not bad, mate. Upgrade.
But went to California on vacation for a month, and that was 33 years ago, and I'm still on vacation.
So your next local was the US then? You was in America by that point? Yeah.
Yeah. I moved here in March of '89, and then I was stuck here because I didn't have a green card or anything for 11 years, so I didn't get to go back until 2001. 12 years. 2001.
Hope you enjoyed that. Thanks for watching or listening, whichever one you did. If you want to support the channel, like, comment and subscribe. We also have some merch available. Soft goods, hard goods, Union zines, new Union Speed Roast coffee over on the Bicycle Union site. Go check it out. See you next time, jabronis.